Hi everyone, welcome back here to Woodworking Wisdom. My name's Colwin and today's all about project kits. So last week, if you remember, we were looking at pen blanks and we turned some interesting pens, I think. Some that I've cast myself with pine cones and corn cobs and all those things, and some that we bought as well. And so I thought today we sort of carry on the same sort of thing, but we're going into project kits this time. So we're going to have a look at kits in a minute. But first of all, we've got Ben on the cameras. He's going to be asking your questions. So don't forget, use that chat function and he'll convey those questions. And I'll try my best to answer them, of course. Since last week, I'd been up to Sittingbourne in Kent and done the robust presentation. So we're looking at robust lathe, American Beauty, and we had some fun there playing around with the machine and talking to some people. I thought because they are regulars to Woodworking Wisdom, I just put a few pictures up of some of the people that we met up there. Just a few. I've met loads of people, but here are just a few. And so we're going to start off with... That's Michael Davenport out there. Michael, I forgot his brother. Michael and John Davenport, regulars for Woodworking Wisdom, right from the very, very beginning, in fact. So I wanted to say a big hi to Michael and John. And then we had, who else did we have? We got Clive and Martin Crosswell there. And again, I've asked all these people if we can put their photos up just to show you guys some of the regulars that you're chatting to every week. And then, of course, right at the end, there's Frederick. Frederick's usually one of the first one in, does a lot of commenting and a lot of questions, and is the most helpful person, or certainly was for me on Saturday anyway, running around giving flyers out and giving information, getting teas and coffee and all those sorts of things. So as well as being really, really into his wood turning and lathe work, he was really, really helpful on the day. So thanks, Frederick, and thanks everyone else that made the time to come up and see us for the robust tour. It was a really fun day, like I said, and I hopefully answered a few of your questions on the robust. But don't forget, that tour is carrying on now. It's going to be at Basingstoke this weekend, whatever this weekend is, Saturday. So what are we on today, the 6th or 7th? And then, so yeah, this Saturday at Basingstoke, if you want to ask questions about the robust lathe. So we've got a question to start with. Excellent.
Yep, so a question from Terry. He's asking, what do you use to clean down your lathe with after a wet turning session?
Many things, however, certainly for cast beds like this, a little bit of Garaflex. Garaflex is a rubberized block with abrasive in it. You can get that at several different grades. You can use things like Webrax material, which is like Scotch-Brite, or you can use a fine abrasive. Once you've rubbed it down, then put something like camellia oil on, or you can use your wax polishes. So things like the microcrystalline waxes, normal paste waxes, those sorts of things. They're a good rust inhibitor, and also they work to slide the tool rest and the banjos along the bed as well. So yeah, any of those. Yes, Ben.
And a question from Steve. In your experience, what paste wax have you found gives you the highest gloss finish, or are they all pretty similar?
They're not really. No, well, I say they're not really. Most are fairly similar. So if you go microcrystalline, which has a water inhibitor in, or you go the general paste waxes, they're pretty much the same, a satiny finish. But the brightest one I found is the Hampshire Sheen Gloss wax. That's the best one for a high shine. It's got the most conauber wax in it, so you develop a really, really high sheen with that one. So that's the Hampshire Sheen High Gloss wax. All right, so let's crack on. I've got 3 projects. Last week we done 4 pens, I think it was, and that was a bit of a push, if I'm honest. We've got 3 projects today. I'm not saying it's going to be less of a push, but we'll see how we go. So let's have a look. These are just examples. I'm going to do one of these. So which is the best one? Pen, there we are. So what we used to call a trumpet pen. Okay, little desk pen. So I'm going to make the base. So I'm going to do a gold one of those. We've got the black one there, but I'm going to do a gold version. A little bit of a resin flash going on. So there's my blank. I'll talk to you about the blank in a minute. You can see it's almost sort of hockey puck size at this stage, but we'll look at that one. And then another variation on that. I won't turn this one because it's just the same style of turning, just a different kit. And this is just a little letter holder, I guess, envelope holder, that sort of thing, but done in the same way, screwed in from the back, and we'll show you how that all works in a minute. So that's the first one we're going to do. Then we're going to go on to use one of the leftover blanks from last week, actually. This is one of those resin blanks that we've got the cones in, and I'm going to make, out of that one, we're going to make a bottle opener. Okay, so there we are, little bottle opener. I've already sized and put the hole in for the blank, so it's just going to be all about the turning. We're going to talk about drilling and all those sorts of things, but that should make a nice little bottle holder, a bottle opener handle. And then I've succumbed. I did vow one day that I would never put pencil crayons in resin, but everybody seems to have done it already, so I'm very late to the party. However, I thought, well, it might be quite a nice little project. We'll make a little bottle stopper. So I've got, or I cast a little blank last week with pencil crayons. Okay, and we'll turn that into little bottle stopper. I've already drilled the hole. Obviously, we've had to prep because of drying times. I've drilled the hole. I've used an epoxy resin to screw that in, and then glued in that main thread, and then that will attach later on once we've got the thing turned into the actual bottle stopper itself. Okay, so we're going to turn that shape. We'll leave that one till last. Now, like anything, I don't know how it's going to go. Hopefully it's going to go well. Everything will come out at a finish. We don't know that. So this is all part of the excitement for you guys and the nerves for me. So we'll see what happens. We'll start with a little trumpet pen, with the gold trumpet pen. So I've prepped the blanks up by, first of all, casting 3. I've already done 2, if you remember. So all I've got to do now is hold this in the chuck, turn the base, make sure there's a hole running through it for the screw to run up through, and then I can turn the shape. We may look at some carbide tip tools as well. I'm quite keen to look at those. This can be troublesome when you're turning resin and timber, so we'll have a look and see how that works. This is a bit of very, very old oak. It's got some worm and things like that in as well. So, and the reason I prepped this already is just because I broke it out of the mold. It was a bit messy. It was in squares. Because I chopped it and I just wanted to take the corners off. I thought, well, if I get them all turned the same size, it makes life easier for me before we start the demo. So there we are. So that's going to be the back. I'm going to use my C-jaws to hold. They'll open up wide enough, because all I'm going to do now is create a recess in the back. We need to drill a hole because the actual kit, if I grab the kit for you, it screws on. Okay, there's a little screw there, so that screw goes into there. So what we're going to have to do in a measure, I'm going to have to measure the distance from the screw to the bottom of the trumpet bit there. So that's how much timber we need to leave. There's not a lot of adjustment in these, so I've got to be quite accurate with that. And we can trim a little bit of timber away, of course, if I don't go deep enough. I'd rather that than gone too deep and have to start again, sort of thing. So that's where we are. I quite like these trumpet pen kits because they're just a nice little statement piece. They sit on the desk nicely. This gold one's quite a cute one as well. So this is the back. So let's see how we start. Yes, Ben, before we do, got a question?
So a question here from Rustic Woody. Can you give an idea of the minimum cost to get started with the basic resin blanks?
If you're casting yourself, you can get a small tub, 500ml tub, which you can pick up, I think, for around about £40. There are other resins on the market as well. I think probably you'll be looking at 25, one of the cheaper ones, for a small tub. Just be mindful of the thickness. Some resins, you buy them by thickness. So if we're talking things like glass cast, for instance, you get glass cast 10, glass cast 3, or glass cast 50. That's millimeters, so thickness. The EPOXY that we use here, that's pretty much every thickness if you go with the casting resin, so the UV-POXY. If you go countertop resin, then it'll only be 3 mils. So have a look at those. Be careful what you go for. But yeah, the resin is by nature, it's an expensive product, so that's why small things are quite good. If you get into river tables and things like that, then you'll be probably spending hundreds on that. And the last couple I made, I spent about 150 quid just on the resin before I even started buying the timber and things like that. So yeah, just be aware of things like that. So little projects like this are quite good because you can make quite a few from your one batch of resin, sort of thing. And all I'm going to do first, I'm just going to tidy up that underside just to make it nice and clean, just so we've got a nice flat face first. Just a bevel rubbing push cut with the bowl gouge. There we are. Nice and simple. I'm not going to do too much to that. I'll tell you what we will do is just put a slight bevel on that back corner. I'm not saying that that's going to be the finishing diameter yet, but just to clean that up so there's no sharp edges in the way sort of thing. Now, let's take our first measurement. So I've got a set of vernier here. Don't normally use vernier. It's far too accurate for me normally. But let's have a look. I'm just going to measure the thickness of the blank. Roughly 21 mil. The amount of exposed thread there is 10. So that would equate to me drilling into 11. So we'll do that straight away. We're going to do the big hole first and then the smaller 4 mil hole. This is a 10 mil drill bit, by the way. Okay, we're going to use a drill chuck in the tailstock. 10 mil drill bit to start with and then a 4 mil to finish off. So I want to go into about 10 mil. Sorry, 11 mil, which is there. I've marked that already. Now that you'll need to mark or measure your own, don't forget, because this is working on the thickness I have here. These blanks are 21 mil thick. So yours may not be. And then we're going to go the rest of the way with a 4 mil drill bit. There we are. And now before I go any further, I'm going to check that. I'm going to make sure I haven't made any massive mistakes. And at this stage, it doesn't matter. We can take it out and put it back in the chuck. There's no accuracy to worry about. So let's pop that thread through. I just literally want to put the screw through. And we'll just see where we are. Let me just show you a minute. There we are. So it is literally just tipping through, probably by about 2 millimeters. That's absolutely fine. I don't think it'll actually grab at the moment. Let me just check that. Might do. But it's going to give me a little bit of room. Oh, it's just grabbing. So that'll give me a little bit of room there to do my sanding and any sort of tweaking, that sort of stuff. So that's okay. So we've got 2 holes, remember. We've got a 10 mil main hole and then a 4 mil going through that, just clearance for the actual screw. All right. Now, if you're into production turning, you can obviously do all of your blanks to that point first before you move on. Now, I'm going to make a recess as well. Now, be careful. If you make your recess, don't go too deep. But I'm just going to cut a recess for another set of jaws, and I'll just explain that after we've answered the next few questions. Yes, Ben?
Okay, so a question from Robert Smith. He says he hasn't seen or heard Craig for a few weeks. Is he still with Axminster?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, Craig is next door. He's in there doing some training at the moment. What's happened, there's been a little bit of a move around. So you're going to see a lot more of myself, Ben and Jason. Craig is moving into product development. So you would have seen Craig's passion for product development when he was talking about things like the new dovetail jig. So that was one of his early babies. He was heavily involved in developing that, and there's a huge amount of things. So he's moved into that team, and so he's going to be coming back from time to time doing videos with new bits and bobs, new things that we're developing and all those sorts of things. You'll also see him doing all of the video manuals for all the new machinery and any existing machinery which we're trying to promote through the range, videos, QR codes, all those sorts of things. So no, he hasn't gone anywhere. He's still doing videos and things like that, but he's not going to be a regular on Woodworking Wisdom, but he will make appearances from time to time. So no worries, he's around. I can hear him. He's next door.
and again, we've all got background in machining and things like that, so we can look after things like the bandsaws and the routing. You know, we're all kind of multi-skilled in here, so you're not going to miss out on that sort of thing. And then a question here from the Wizen Chef. Can you use embossing powder to color the resin?
Oh, I don't know. I've never used embossing powder, you say. I don't know. What we tend to use is mica powders, because there's specific powders that you can use with the resins that we sell for resins, and that I've always tended to use when using resins. Either the mica powders, which are like a metallic powder, or glitters, that sort of thing. We've just brought a new range of mica powders, actually. We went all different colors, which are very opaque. So you don't have to put much in and you get completely solid color. Whereas resin tints or pigments, you tend to dictate the density of color by the amount you put in. But the mica powder is not so much. So I don't know about embossing powders. I've never used them. Not sure. There is a specific product that we do for that. So, all right, for the minute. Right then. So I'm going to do a recess in here. The recess I'm making is to take a small set of these jaws. These are O'Donnell jaws. Okay, and so I'm just doing a small recess in the back. It seems to work. For me, you don't have to. What you could do, you could have a completely flat back if you wished, and hold them in a set of wood jaws, that sort of thing. So purpose make your jaws. So do the back, do the front. Once you've sanded that off, hold it back in here again, a little bit like we did the coasters the other day, and then tidy up the front and sand it. But this, for ease, is nice and quick. Sort of thing. You could decorate that as well. You could put little beads and all sorts in there. So I'm going to pop that one in. So it's just a little mark. Then I can cut the recess. I'll start off with a set of, not a set, I'll start off with a parting tool. And you don't have to go deep. Then let's go bowl gouge. Just readjust a little bit to go nice and close. There we are. And let's go back to the skew now. Something small like this. You don't have to create a dovetail, but as I've got the skew in the hand, I can. There we are. So just a little recess. Like I say, you don't have to do that. And you can also re-grab that afterwards. If you wanted to get rid of a recess or even a foot to use the grip, you could then hold from the center once you finish the project to take off any hold point if you wish. But this is a very, very quick way of working. A little bit of sanding now, just very quickly, and a little bit of oil. These are all going to be oil finished. Starting with fairly coarse abrasive. I'm going to start with 100. $150 and a $240, and then we'll go down to a 400. And then lastly, 600. And we'll probably do this throughout most of these projects. We're going to go with some water or sanding in a minute. So some finer abrasive as well. But for this one, where it's predominantly timber, that's what we'll stick with. There we are, a little bit of oil. Just wipe off the excess. A little bit of buffing. You can go back in now and sand with your 600 grit if you want to. That'll create a lovely slurry, which will grain fill the timber. But that should be enough. Yes, Ben?
So a question here from Adrian. Would you ever consider using a self-adhesive felt material on the basis of these projects?
Probably something like this, yes. But it'd be one of the only things. I'm not a fan, because usually it's, you know, things like lamps and bowls, the felt is generally there to hide something. So I get suspicious with felt. I don't think it looks very nice. But on a trumpet pen, maybe, it would it lend itself to that sort of product. Felt or cork, something like that. There we are. That's the bottom. Obviously now we've got a lot of work to do on the top, so chuck can come off. Remember, we were going to use the OD1s, so 1 inch external. Sorry, 1 inch internal, and we're going to expand into our project. Don't go too mad with your expansion. Remember, you're expanding onto, in this case, a resin. I don't want to take too much off this. I'm just going to skim and clean that surface up, but nothing else. And we're just going to do a dome, basically. And we're hoping that I can do that with a bowl gouge, but from previous experience, I know that bowl gouges don't do that well in terms of holding their edge with resin. So we'll see how far we can go. Okay, let's just stop and have a look at that. I'm just going to throw that down the extractor. It's actually not that bad. That's come up quite well. I'm going to leave a fairly big flap because the bottom section of the trumpet itself is quite wide, so I don't want to sort of get in the way of that. That's actually worked out quite well. I think we can just go straight onto sand now. My alternatives, if that wasn't working because it was blunting the tool, what I'd have done, I've got prepped and ready, is one of my carbide tip tools. In fact, we'll give it a little go. Okay. And the flat one, nice and flat, handle high. Okay, and they'll last just a little bit longer, being carbide, of course. That would have been my go-to. There we are. Right, let's sand again. So dust extraction on. There we are, 150. $240. Really, really quick, simple project. I've made it a little bit harder for myself because we've added the resin, of course. You just done straight timber and a lot easier. So that was 240, so 400. Let's have a look and see where we are. Yeah, that's looking good. I like that. This is the so there's no pigment in this one. Going back to what we were saying earlier, this is the mica powder in here. It's the EPOXY blue. There we are, 600, and then a little bit of oil. Now it doesn't really matter when it comes to your oil on this sort of thing. Finishing oil is my go-to. Food safe oil is fine. So are the citrus oils, lemon oils, and things like that. They all work really well. The good thing with oils is they hide scratches, and the good thing with resin is you literally have to put a liquid over the top, and any scratches that are there disappear. In fact, if you add layers of resin on top of each other, you stop at about 240 grit. and when you sand between layers, and you pour the resin back on again, and everything disappears. So it's a really lovely material to work with that way. There's lots of wormholes and burrs, burls, all those sorts of things in this bit of timber, which is quite nice. Or dead worm, of course. There's nothing live wiggling around in there still. Just wipe off the excess. Lathe speed just a bit slower. Turn the lathe on. I'll give that a little bit of a sand with 600 grit, just to give it a final polish. There we go. And then buff at higher speed, a bit of tissue, just to bring that polish back. So if you're into craft shows, craft fairs, that sort of stuff, these are great little gifty items. Not going to set anybody back too much. Oh, just take out the old tissue. Brush that up with a bit of, or with a little brush. There we are. That resin looks really, really nice in there. All right. You get a real density with those mica powders. Let's attach the pen. Whilst I'm doing that, Ben's got another question.
So a question from Terry. Could you use a teak oil?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Don't see why not. A little bit dark, aren't they? But yeah, I can't see any issues. A bit fiddly, but there he's in. There we are, our first project of the afternoon. Let's get the pen out of its packet a minute. There it is. There we are. So first pen done. I like that little flash with that gold. That works really well. All right, so let me grab the other one. So we've got a nice little pair of pens there. Probably want them, they're both the same color if you're going to present them as a pair, but nice little desk pens, those. Okay, onwards and upwards. Let's go on to the bottle opener next. Ben, yes, question.
Question from Cliff. What was the original size of the base?
Original size of the base. Good question. Not that much smaller, actually, than I started with. Let me measure that one. So we finished with 65. It would have been probably about 66 because we didn't take much off apart from the sanding. So 66, 67, but you know, anything between 60, 70 would look quite cool. Don't go too small on them. They do need a bit of stability, and likewise too big, they're going to look a bit bottom heavy. So about 60, 70 mil should be about fine. Yes, Ben. And
then one from Radar. When turning bowls and vases, how can you keep the vibration down?
Speed is one thing. Sometimes you're never going to win. Sometimes that bowl blank may not be balanced throughout the make. Some timbers differ in density from heart to sap, and so you might just have to put up with it. But speed is a big one. If it's vibrating like mad, get that speed down a little bit.
And yes, then Mark's asking, long hole boring drive center. They bought this recently, and today was using it with the small pin in. Retracting the tailstock, the housing on the center came out over the bearing. Is that normal?
Send me that as an email with some pictures so I can get exactly what you're talking about, and we'll sort that out for you. Woodworking email address, Ben. I forget it all the time.
Woodworkingwisdom@axminster.com.
Still quite easy, really, isn't it? Now, what we got here, we're going to do more questions in a minute, but just very briefly whilst I'm putting this together. This blank, this is one that I cast last week. I've already pre-drilled it to take the metal section of the opener with an 8.5mm drill bit. That hole is in this end, and I'm using the tailstock sensor to go into that hole. And because it's resin, it'll spin if I try and use friction. So what we're using is one of the Pro drives. And I'm just going to sacrifice a couple of millimeters of that end to clean up afterwards. So we're going to start between centers, basically. All right. Any questions, Ben? Or is that it for the minute?
So there's a question. a couple of people have asked about the Valentine's spoon, the hand carved love spoon. That should be online. If not, I'll chase them up upstairs in a moment, and we'll get it on after this demo.
There we are. Now we're going to keep it simple. This is a very, very attractive material. It's got those lovely cones running through it. So we're going to keep the actual shape simple. I'm going to start off with my bowl gouge as a roughing gouge. I don't want to take too many big catches with it. We may go to the skew as well. But my first job is to get down to round. I'm going to put the dust extraction on because there's a huge amount of static builds up on this, and I don't want it clogging me up. So I'm going to try and drag as much of it away as possible. Right, a little bit flat there. Let's just have a look and stop and see where we are. Always like looking at these pieces. They're stunning bits when turned. Those lovely cones coming through. There are a couple of little flats we need to remove. So I'm just going to keep going for the minute. Yes, Ben?
So the Wizen Chef's asking, is the... Sorry. Good man, thank you. Is the resin handle with the pine cones, is that going to be as strong as a piece of wood?
No. No, it won't be. No, it won't be, but it's going to be strong enough. I've made a few of these resin ones anyway. Resin is tremendously strong, but just don't make the end thin where it's going into that shaft. No, you're not going to get, unless you go for metal, of course, you're not going to get much stronger than wood itself. There we are. Let's have a look and see if we're flat. The other thing is when you start encapsulating things like this, you've got the strength of that particular material. So in this case, pine cones, and they're not particularly strong, but like I say, they're going to be strong enough for this project. Yes, Ben?
A question from Jed. Could you use a skew chisel for roughing down?
Yeah, you can do. Absolutely. We're going to go on to the skew in a minute, actually. But yeah, absolutely. A little bit slower than this for resin. If this was a piece of timber, that would be the go-to. Right, I think we're nearly there. We have a little bit of an air inclusion down this end, so I'm going to try and shake that out in a minute. But we're pretty much there. So skew chisel now comes in. And we'll go with the medium size. Just tidy at the end. Once I've tidied the end up, then I just need to adjust. I'll start to get that pressure back on again. Then I don't need to take much off this end at all, just the smallest amount. And what I'm going to do now is just test it on my... Open up. I want to get it on and get it stuck, so let's just double check. I can do with being a little bit smaller here, if I'm honest. It's just a little bit proud, so probably another 2 mil off of that I'm going to go. And in doing that, we should get rid of this air bubble here. So this won't just be left to screw in. I will put this in with epoxy resin. So another couple of mil off of that. There we are. See what I mean about that build up? Right, I'm just going to check on that little air hole. We do need to get rid of that. Yeah, another couple of mil depth. And we'll taper down nicely. Now let's go here. I'm just going to treat this like timber. And just use the skew to slice in. I'm not going to go. Oh, I'm not going to go too small at this stage. The reason being that this is, unlike timber, this is brittle, and what will happen? It'll snap as I start making a vibration as I skew this finish. So that'll be enough for the minute. There's very slight vibrations there. That could be enough to snap that off that end. There we are. Stop and have a look. There we are. So there's a little bit of an air hole left there. I'm going to leave that. We could fill that with epoxy glue if we want to, but I think I'm just going to leave it. I don't want to go too much thinner. Yes, Ben, sorry.
A question from Robert. He's just been given a large amount of 32 mil oak worktop. Apart from shallow bowls and large platters, any other ideas?
32 mil, shallow bowls, large platters, wine tables, lots of bottle openers. You can cut it down and make as many small things as possible. 2-part candlesticks. Okay, you'll have an upright and you have the base. Many things. Yeah, many things just like that. Pot stands. Right. I am going to do a little bit of sanding before we go too much thinner at that end. So just a wee bit. We're going to get some water involved as well. But let's start with a 150, which sounds quite coarse. But really works quickly, especially when you've got other things within the resin. We are going to oil the handle. The oil will have to dry. Right, let's have a quick look. What I'm looking for, not scratches so much, it's going to be full of them at the moment, but any bits like this here. So this is just a little bit of that flat left. So I'll sand that for a bit more. This area here is just taking a little bit of sanding also. That's where that air bubble was. There we are. So now we can go 240. Right, let's have a look. Before we get the water in, I just want to check. Yeah, that's good. I like that. So then we get the water in. I'm going to put the trough underneath. We'll start with our coarse one, work our way up, slow the lathe down a little bit. Just always slow the lathe down, only because I don't want to get a covering. There we are. Number 2. Well, we'll work our way up. So that was those 2. Let's go to the next one. 4. Five. Have a look. 6. Right, a little bit of oil. And I'm going to sand that oil in. Quite chuffed with that, if I'm honest. Right, I'm just going to take a little bit of this end away. I've got to be really careful here. I'm not going to have the extraction running. Well, if you do, just have your hose just up and out the way. If this just to come off, and it can come off when you least expect it, I don't want it to go down in the extractor. All I'm going to do, hold on to the handle, a little bit more pressure. I've got to be fairly careful. And I'm going to hand finish the end to the same level as we've got throughout. So I'm side scraping as I go. Whether you can see any of this happening. So just side scraping. And it should, there we are, should just pop. And that gives me just the tiniest little nib to clean up. If I can get that close to the camera without things glaring. All right, just a tiny little nib. And what we can do with this, we've got little hand sanding pads. We'll pop in the chuck. We can then get everything popped together. Yes, Ben.
Okay, so we've got a couple of comments and a load of questions here, Colwin. A good one from Steve. A toothbrush would be handy for defluffing the mandrel, or the pen in that case, the handle. Bob P, agree with him. It looks like trilobites. We were saying that earlier.
We say that, yeah.
What else have we got here? When you cast the handle, Colwin, was it under pressure or in a vacuum, or was it just natural air?
This one was under pressure. I'd done 3 loads of casting last week. This one was under pressure because I could get this in the pressure pot. The other ones I'd done last week was the ones for the trumpet pen. And I'd done a third one, didn't I? One that went wrong. Oh no, it was the polymer clay pens that went wrong. No, under pressure. Because the reason I'd done that one under pressure is purely because the cones had a lot of natural voids in them, and I didn't want too many air bubbles. There was one air bubble then you saw, but usually under pressure they shrink to almost nothing. You won't be able to see them even. So yeah, they were, but the trumpet pens weren't.
And Real Simple Things is asking whether you've made a decision or whether it's the boat or the robust machine.
We were at Real Simple Things. We were up there on Saturday talking whether my next investment is going to be a new boat or the robust lathe, because they're about the same price. No, I haven't. That will be my wife's decisions, not mine.
And
good to see you, by the way.
Fuller's asking, is it advisable to wipe off the blank between grits?
You know, I don't bother. I don't think it make a difference. I don't know. I've never noticed anything, you know, any downside not to doing it.
And Jed would like to know, can you use an oil on a resin?
That's what I'm using. Absolutely. It works really, really well, especially if you're doing things like rivet tables. So you sand the resin with water first, and then go over it all with oil, and so it benefits the timber and gives a real shine to the resin. Yeah, it works well.
And then from Hal, what grit sandpaper were you using with the oil?
But that was 600. Just a very quick sanding. I want to get this one finished for you before we move on. There we are. That's a 240. We go to 400, and then I'll just do a little bit of hand sanding with the water bath, and then we'll put oil on that, put it together, and then we'll do that last little project. And this is exactly the same thing that I would do with a wooden handle.
And Fuller would like to know, would an oil be a durable finish?
It certainly has been on all of the tables that I've made, yes. Yeah, it's really worked well. The only thing I would say with rivet tables and oil and resin is watch your coffee cups, because it does like to raise. So the finishing oil that I use, certainly on wood as well, has had to put up with curries and wine and beer and Guinness and all those sorts of things, hot things. So on wood, it's a very, very durable finishing oil anyway. But on resin, of course, it's not penetrating that much. It's only going in a short way. So yeah, probably not as much, but certainly nothing at this stage that's worn on any of my table. I've got 2 resin tables in our living room, and it's holding up well. They got a real shine about them. There we are. So I could stay here for ages and do this, but there we are. I didn't go all the way through those greys, just a token gesture to show you. There we are, a little bit more oil. Oil does, like on timber, it will need to dry. Usually between coats about 24 hours. That's what I tend to give it. I'll get in front of the camera in a minute. I'm not concentrating. Oh, lovely. Those trilobites coming through. And we'll put that all together. Like I say, a little bit of epoxy resin would be good now. Next project. All right, so just another nice gifty item, really. We'll get them all out together in a minute once we've finished everything. Right now, what we're doing bottle stop. So let's go with a bottle stop arbor. Bottle stop arbor is there. Yeah, let's take that out. If you haven't seen a bottle stop arbor, I'll slow down a little bit. It's just a 1 Morse taper. You have replaceable nylon bushings that go on, and these represent the outside diameter of your bottle stop kits. So they're very much like a bushing on a pen kit. So you turn down to that diameter if you want to. You might want to do a different shape altogether, so you don't always have to. That then screws in. That. And that nylon bushing represents the diameter that we have here. All right, just to give you an idea. I will admit, on doing this and I ran out of pencils. So that corner doesn't have one. So that was my bad. Didn't calculate properly. Yes, Ben.
Okay, so a few questions here, Colwin. First one is from Robert Smith. What's the difference between finishing oil and the likes of a friction polish? Is a finishing oil a polish?
No, a finishing oil is an oil. It's which is not very helpful comment. But an oil is designed to penetrate the timber, to nourish the timber. You can get food safe oils where you would put that on salad bowls and things like that, or you can get toy safe oils, things like fruit bowls and crafty items. Finishing oil is classed as a toy safe. Food safe oil is generally called food safe oil. All right. That sort of thing. And they are, like I say, they're designed to nourish, to soak in. Friction polish or a wood turner's polish, that sort of thing, that's based on French polish. So it's shellac and carnauba. Generally with friction polishes, the carnauba is high in content. That's what gives the shine. They're generally meant for smaller items. So your gifty items, sort of boxes, light pulls, bottle stoppers, that sort of size. As soon as you start going up to bowls, then the amount of carnauba in them creates a few drag lines, that sort of stuff. So then I would move on up to things like sanding sealer and the wax polishes. Okay, so they're very different things. If you put water over a friction polish, it'll lift it. But with finishing oils and food safe oils, it withstands a lot more water. All right. Yes, Ben.
And then Fuller's asking, what about a CA finish? Could you use a CA finish on a resin?
Yeah, you can do. We're starting to get a little bit big, though, for it. It will start to drag. And I don't have a massive amount of experience with CA finishes, as I said last week. But I know that as soon as you go too big, you do run the risk of dragging it because it's drying all the time, even though you're using that most of the time with oils. I'm going to research CA finishes because I want to do a little bit. There's a lot of questions about it, but it has to be on smaller items.
And then a couple of questions from Jed. The first one, are some resins poisonous or are they all poison free?
Poisonous as in dust, I'm guessing you mean. And I would treat them as any other dust. Timber's poisonous if you ingest it. If you breathe that in, some more poisonous than others, but they are all classed as poisonous. And hazardous waste as well. As a company like us, if we try and get rid of dust, not just for its combustion, but because of toxicity, it's classed as hazardous waste. So any dust that we make on the lathe is poisonous to us, and we must extract away, and you must protect yourself firsthand. I'm only like this because I'm talking to you. When I leave here and I go to my workshop, I'm completely encased with my airflow respirator. So no, everything is poisonous. Yes, this will be as well.
And Jed's asking, what's the difference between food safe and toy safe?
Food safe is has gone through a process to eliminate heavy metals, and it's okay to be mouthed once dry. Food safe oil generally is a mineral oil, so when wet, it's not classed as toxic. Okay, toy safe has a drying agent in. That drying agent a lot of the time is things like white spirit, that sort of stuff, and is toxic. So it has to be dry before it can be mouthed, so hence toy safe. Okay, that's why I sort of did make the difference between applying on a fruit bowl to a salad bowl. Salad bowls, you've got wet foods in, so that'll be a food safe oil. Fruit, you generally have dry foods anyway. Okay, so we're going to whip through this one. Nice, quick speed. We'll rough it down first with our gouge. Again, I'm not going to go over complicated with this. We're just going to keep it fairly simple. I'm going to get the dust extraction on, so we're going to hold off questions just for the minute. Let me get the bulk of this one done. I'm going to start our shape. So parting tool to begin with. And let's go beading tool. And now we can start shaping. So I'm going to go with the bowl gouge again. We're going to go to a much sharper one. And again, I'm going to leave a little bit at the top to clean up in a minute. And we'll save that to last. Have a look and see what we got. It's a little bit like Christmas presents. You never quite know what's happening until the lathe stops. That's quite sweet. Quite like that. Okay, let's take that little nib away. I think I'll go back to the skew for that one. A little bit more controllable. Then we can sand and put a polish on. I like that. Right, let's give it a sand. We'll go through, I think I'll get a fresh load of abrasive. I'll start at 150 and we'll work through to 400. In fact, we'll go to 6. So 240. 400. Stop and see what we got. Yeah. Bit of 600, and let's go straight on with. Let's use an oil again. It's going to bring out the colour. I'm just going to slow the lathe down rather than stop it, I think, just to help me. There we are. Right, there we are. That's quite pretty. I'm quite pleased with that. I do say so myself. Put that onto our bowl stopper. Unusual. There we are. Let's get all the other pieces into place. So let's get our gold trumpet pen out and our bottle opener. There we are. Hopefully, that's just giving you just a few ideas of alternative materials or resin casting and how you can play with that resin. Pencil crayons, pine cones, and this is a piece of oak burr here, but just mixing up those mica powders. This incidentally was a clear resin that we encapsulated those pencil crayons with. There we are. Yes, questions, Ben?
Okay, so we've got quite a few questions here, Colwin. First off, from Martin. Hi, Martin. How did you cast the pencils, please?
Right. Sorry. Beg your pardon. Yes, miles away. Then pencils. I actually used, just go and grab my mold. I used a lizard mold, but you could use, certainly the cones, the pine cones were cast in just a, so I had some old plywood and I made a box, sealed it with some mastic. But this was an actual resin mold that I've got here. So this is the lizard blanks. I'm not entirely sure whether we're still doing lizard mold. So Axminster, if you're there, would you check just to make sure we are, or let people know if we are or we aren't. This one was actually called a Project Blank mold. So it's for bottle stops. Okay, so that was quite an easy one. And I didn't want to use the full width of this, so all I've done is blank parts of it off with a bit of plywood as well, so I wasn't using all of it. I just didn't have enough pencil crayons for that. All right, so I blanked that section off with some ply. Nice and simple. Yes.
And then could you, from the Wizen Chef, could you use a roughing gouge to turn down the pencil blank?
Yeah, you could do a little bit aggressive for me. I'm always a little bit nervous when turning these sorts of things, especially when they've got other foreign components in, because I don't know the densities they're mixed. And so I want to be a little bit more cautious, I guess. And when I'm using the bowl gouge, I'm using it like a skew. I'm using the bottom wing and 45 degrees to run along it. So it's quite a friendly cut, where a roughing gouge is quite aggressive. So for me, I would always go bowl gouge.
And Jed's asking, what's the difference between a beading tool and a skew?
A beading tool, or beading and parting tool, is basically a square flat skew. So if we can get onto that one. So there's a beading and parting tool. Okay, so it's square in section and it's flat across the top. Don't get confused with a beadan tool, which is a a taper on one side but flat on the bottom with the same profile tip. And they're generally used for sizing. But that's that one. Beading and parting tools were developed to make bead forming easier. So it's just a slight step away from a traditional skew.
There's also some great money-saving tips from Fuller on here about bottled stop arbors and things like that. So, sorry, just scrolling down through. Terry's asking, who has wine left in a bottle? Who needs a stopper? Where we go in here? Terry's asking, how come the colour didn't come out the pencils?
It did. It did a little bit. I was worried. I didn't tell you, but I was worried as I was sanding that one. It did bleed a little bit. Yeah, as I was sanding. What I was thinking of doing potentially was sanding seal, then sand. That might have helped a little bit. But no, I did lose a little bit, especially around this, the top two or just either side of the high spots on the on there. So I guess this is a black here. I probably it was coming from those 2 points, but there is where it's bleeding a little bit. But no, overall, I think by the time the oil went on, it washed it all off, and it was it come out okay.
And Jed's asking, is there a type of oil that will stay shiny after you've rubbed it down with a piece of tissue?
Yeah, most oils will. It's how you apply them. It's how you treat them. So at the moment, these are going to die back a little bit. What you need to do is let them dry, then recoat, very, very fine coats. And you can apply it like French polish. You can put sort of 10, 15 coats if you want to. Every subsequent coat you put on, your finish is going to get shinier and shinier. But like I say, treat it the same way as French polish. Buff it on, small circles, very lightly. Let them dry between. If you don't let them dry between, it will always stay sticky. So like I say, 24 hours usually is enough. And then you can very lightly denib and away again. As you get from your third to fourth coat, you may not need to do any more denibbing. You can just apply on top each time. But it's the drying time in between which is key. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions. I hope you've enjoyed that again. It was just something a bit different. I wanted to sort of move on from the pen blanks that we done last week, give you a few more ideas. And that's what this is all about. It's giving you ideas, and it's taking your ideas and playing with them. Lots of things we've never done before. The pencil bottle stopper was the case in question there. So next week, I'm going to look at doing a salt and pepper grinder. I'm going to use a crush grind mechanism, make a salt and pepper grinder. And I think tomorrow, Ben, you've got a scroll saw project going on.
Yep, scroll saw castles tomorrow.
Scroll saw castles, and then we're looking at texturing again with Jason on Thursday. So keep watching. Don't forget, it's the same time tomorrow on Thursday, 3 o'clock in the Woodworking Wisdom Studios. If you like what you see, don't forget, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it to as many people as you can. But for now, thank you very much. See you next time. Bye bye.